Welcome to Keeping It Real on Purpose. And I am your host, Edna White. And we know everybody wants results, but nobody wants to look at it in a different way or have a relationship with their body. So we're going to be talking about living to eat or looking for a shot that may want to fix us a little bit. So going to be talking about discipline, awareness, and healing, or asking yourself, is it just right for me? Again, my name is Edna White, and I'm going to introduce my guests that will be talking about this topic tonight. And I'm so glad to have them on, and I'll just introduce them one at a time. So we have Dr. Lewis Meline. Am I saying it
Millie.
right? Millen, okay.
Millie.
Give yourself an introduction real quick, and I will go to the next one.
Yes, Dr. Lewis Moline with Straight Shooter Health. Straight Shooter Health is a platform that I developed to provide coaching and counseling guidance for weight loss and health improvement. I'm a retired physician. I'm an obstetrician gynecologist by training, but I've spent 50 years studying health, nutrition, exercise, weight loss, and such things. And now that I have an opportunity, I'm trying to help people with their problems.
Awesome. Okay. Annie Toro Lopez.
Yes, hi, I'm Annie Toro Lopez. I am a food writer and a two-time cookbook author. I'm also a community builder. I've built a group of women here in Denver called the Denver Area Women's Network to alleviate loneliness. I was diagnosed with lupus, systemic lupus erythematosus in my 20s with an ANA of 1 to 3,100. And over a period of about 20 years, actually, I reduced that slowly. And my ANA is now negative, and I've lived symptom-free for 20 years. And a lot of that is due to proper nutrition and listening to my body.
Awesome.
I'm really
I
happy
love
to
that.
be here. Thank you.
I love that. I love that a lot. Okay. And Paul Meld Durham. You say that
Yep. Hi,
right?
yeah, that's fine.
Okay.
All good. So I'm Paul. I'm founder of the Ascend Collective. I have been a personal trainer and I guess nutrition coach for 22 or 23 years now. Two-time, I'm Australian based, which is probably the accent everyone's picking up. So two-time National Trainer of the Year Award. And I've worked with people all the way from elite competitive bodybuilding all the way to people who are recovering from disordered eating or dealing with other challenges like that in their holistic health. So my experience kind of runs the gamut from that, what we normally consider to be quite unhealthy, like the whole bodybuilding lifestyle is quite unhealthy, to bringing people out of that and then bringing people out of chronic health conditions into being able to achieve what they want.
Oh, that's awesome. Awesome. So we're going to just get started into this. This is a question directed to everybody. So everyone could take a turn in answering this. Are people actually unhealthy or just undisciplined and disconnected? So who would like to answer first?
Well, I'll jump in there.
Okay.
All three, actually.
Okay.
People are very disconnected because there's a lot of fallacies and false information floating around out there that people have bought into, the medical community's bought into, virtually everybody's bought into. And this really keeps people from digging in and really becoming healthy. And there's a lot of discipline problems too. People are subject to their habits. And eating is a very big habit, and it's something that people are misled, again, by lots of fallacies and misinformation that's out there.
Right.
And they fall prey to many things. And they don't want to give up their current status. They want to get where they want to be without having to do anything significant. They want to
Right.
do what they're doing, but be where they want to be. And those are mutually exclusive events.
Right. Well, that's cool. I agree with that.
I think also that our diet has fundamentally changed, right? So from whole foods and preparing whole foods and real food to convenience, and we all know, like, the American diet and the fast food and there's so many reasons for that, right? And I don't think that it's necessarily personal failure so much as, just a true change and a shift, and it's a cultural shift. And so I think that plays into it as well.
Okay.
With my view, I can see there can be all three. So there can be disconnect, there can be a lack of discipline, and also an environmental constraint that everyone is put into. As Annie said, like the standard American diet and the standard Australian diet are very similar these days. I just got back from America. It's the same stuff. And we see like this, we see a disconnect from people that are attached to this, they're attached to their social media, the dopamine rush there. People aren't really in touch with themselves. When it comes to discipline, there's a very big culture, particularly online, on goal setting and living your best life and all that kind of stuff, but without the associated downsides of discipline, like what are you willing to give up and or sacrifice to achieve said goal, and then the systemic societal pressure of both advertising and then also social media, where we're being drawn in two directions at all times, which is a very challenging thing for people to navigate.
Right. That's good. All right. So this is a question directed to the doctor. What are you seeing medically that people are ignoring until it's too late?
What's happening medically right now is the GLP-1s. And what people don't realize is this is a medication that was aimed at type 2 diabetics. And obese people inherently are type 2 diabetics. Their body just can't keep up with all the carbohydrates that they're eating, and they become diabetic. So this drug was aimed at helping this class of people, but when they started testing it, just like Viagra, it was meant to be a blood pressure medication. But they started testing it and they discovered that, oh, wow, people are losing weight on this. Why are they losing weight? And so they discover some properties like maybe decreased satiety, things like this. So physicians jump on this. Physicians are desperate for a cure for obesity because diet and exercise is not working. People just aren't embracing that. And so what can they do? And this medicine is great because now you can get a shot or take a pill, and it's going to make you eat less. You're going to lose weight. And of course, you're going to lose weight, lose your health and everything else you've been giving up by eating the way you're eating. But that's not the point. The point is people want something for nothing. They want to be able to take a shot, do what they want, be skinny and healthy. And it's just not... it's not reality. But the medicine is, it's worked because it does have an effect, whether it's a placebo effect or whether it's a real effect. They really haven't been able to define that very well. They do eat less, they do lose weight, they feel good about that, but where are they going to go from there? What are they going to do when they lose their weight? What are they going to do when they lose their health by continuing to eat poorly like they've been eating for so many years? I mean, there's lots of layers to this. And medication is not the way to go. It's just the Band-Aid on top of something that is broken. And we need to head in a new direction.
Okay. Does any of the other guests have anything to add to that?
I want to address that skinny doesn't mean healthy, and that I adopted a long time ago the mantra "fit at any weight," and I will tell you that when I was, and this is a story I've never actually shared publicly before, but when I was 15 years old, my mother had what was then has become gastric bypass surgery. At that time, we straight up called it stomach stapling surgery because her stomach was stapled to make it smaller. Through many, many complications after that, eventually she died because one of the staples in her stomach bled out. What I took away from that is that there are worse things in life than being overweight. I wanted my mom. I didn't care what she weighed, right? So, and I am overweight, but my labs are perfect. Like my blood tests are spot on. So, and a lot of that is nutrition, right? Exactly what we're here to talk about is like eating to nourish my body.
Yeah, absolutely.
In a healthy and thoughtful way. So I don't think that skinny equals healthy. And I do believe in fit at any weight.
All right. That's good.
with what Lewis said about taking the drugs like the Ozempic and Reda and all the other variants that are out now, the key point that I really like that he touched on was people are looking to take the pill or the jab without considering the side effects and the downsides of it. There are significant side effects and downsides, and when we say that diet and exercise don't work, they haven't worked for those particular for people because they may not have done it. That could be for a long enough period of time to see an outcome. They may not have been doing it the right way for them, whatever it is. But a lot of it still comes down to that wanting that quick win and wanting that quick outcome. And that's what so many people are driven for, regardless of the consequence. This very short-term, quick order thinking. And as someone who works with people in that context, still what we generally have to do and what's hard to do, because we're battling so many angles, we need to get people to be aware of the fact that it is going to take time. Both these things are going to take, there's going to be a consequence either way, whether they take the jab or take the pill versus they do the exercise. What's the downside and the consequence? The downside of the exercise is it's going to suck. Like, it's not fun.
Right.
The dieting stuff, if they do want to eat healthier, I'm not even going to say lose weight, because we're going to stick to the health discussion. Eating healthier is not as fun as not eating healthy. Yeah. Like, no one will ever convince me that pizza tastes worse than broccoli. Okay. It's a fairly simple concept to look at. So a lot of it is people managing the downsides of that, and what's happening now with the injections. And because we have the same thing over here, and because I am involved in the bodybuilding community as well, it's 10 times worse than what's happening in the general population. There's a severe lack of consideration of any downsides for a short-term win.
Wow. So since you're talking about that, Paul, what do people say they want versus what they actually willing to do?
That's a really good question. I run all my clients through a framework called WPSC: wants, preferences, consequences, sacrifices. So what do you want? That's your goal. And if someone says they want to do a thing, right? I'll get a lot of people, because of my background and like what I've been doing for years. They want to get a six-pack. They want to look really lean. They want to be Instagram beautiful for photo shoots, right? And then their preference is, well, how do you want to do that? Like, and I have no moral, issues with someone wanting to do it via plant-based diet. They want to do it with medication. They want to do it with, some people will use anabolic steroids and drugs. People will have their preferences to do it. And that's okay. I'm okay with people having a preference. Everyone has choice. What happens is, as a coach, I then go through the wants and the sacrifices and the consequences that those things all require, because all those things, no matter what it is, has a sacrifice and a consequence. And as soon as people actually do that, I use it as a way to stop people making dumb decisions, if that makes sense. Decisions that impact their health. If you are going to do something that's actively going to destroy your health, a lot of the time people just aren't strongly aware of the downsides and the consequences. So, like, for example, if someone wants to use weight loss medication, there is a serious issue of muscle wastage. Okay, they lose muscle. Okay, cool. So what do you have to do? And I go, are you willing to live with that? Is generally my first question. Right. And then I run them through a framework of, what do we need to do to maximize your outcome? What do we need to do to minimize the damage? And how could we possibly mitigate it entirely? So if someone is using retatrutide, it's the best evidence currently is showing, like, if they do weight training 2 times a week, they'll probably mitigate all muscle loss. That's the, like, not, I wouldn't say it's scientific evidence, it's like the experiential evidence that's out there. So are you willing to do that? No. If someone's going to do the performance enhancing drugs or weight loss drugs, it's like, cool, are you willing to take these supplements for your health, or reduce these foods, or reduce alcohol, or whatever it is, to actually achieve that outcome? Yes or no? And if they are, then okay, cool, that's probably the best way we can do it. What happens with 9 out of 10 people is they generally reroute their goal to a more reasonable approach and a healthier approach that's long-term. So in my industry, it makes me very backwards, because like in bodybuilding, I'm like the one guy telling people not to do stuff. Just because most people aren't aware of the risk, the consequences, and the damage that they're doing to themselves. And when you lay it, I like to use the analogy of, everyone who's been in a relationship has probably had a fight with their spouse, and they're convinced that their partner's wrong, and nothing will change their mind. But as soon as they have that internal realization that they're the problem, they'll change behavior. So I get people to not yell at them, not to talk down to them or lecture them. It's like, these are the consequences, and make them aware of that, make them aware of their own consequences. And then people generally aren't that dumb. They tend to make better decisions. So that's the framework that I generally like to run people through with that.
Okay. That's good. That's good. Where do you see the discipline breakdown in the body or mindset?
Mine 10 times out of 10.
That's good.
With like, we live in a world where we have like some very conflicting and different views of discipline. So we have the David Goggins-esque world and the Jocko, which is, run till you die, like burn the boats type thing.
Right.
Work for injury. And then you have people who will be like, the self-compassion, acceptance, how you are is good enough, etc. You don't need to have goals for moving towards that way. There's a whole different realm of things.
Right.
And a lot of people are very easily influenced by what they watch and what they see. It's fairly normal. What I generally see as the biggest downside is that people aren't particularly good at doing two things. Number one is delaying gratification, which if we are going to do like weight loss and or health achievements, improvements, it is going to be a gradual process. Like Annie took years to, which is awesome what you did, by the way, but it wasn't like an overnight fix. Okay. So delayed gratification is super important. And then the other one is if they are improving their health, so fitness, losing weight, improving their health through other things, is that there's going to be some degree of discomfort, and that leaning into the discomfort is actually not the worst thing for you.
Right.
Like nothing really ever impressive or nothing meaningful really gets done without some degree of discomfort. Like we wouldn't say building a business and building a company is an enjoyable process. Building a relationship takes work. All these things take a lot of work. So when people look at changing their health or their fitness, they think it's going to be an easy process. And a lot of times just like lean discomfort, because once you get through that initial thing of discomfort, it's like the standard advice, like drink a glass of water if you're hungry. Once you get past that discomfort and you can delay gratification long enough, you will achieve pretty much any goal over a long enough time frame.
Gotcha. That's
because
good.
the expectation is I'll do it in a week. Yeah. If I'll do it in a week, but it takes 3 months, that's a different expectation.
That's good stuff. All right. Anyone else have anything to say about that?
I mean, I think that, mindset gets thrown around a lot, and I guess for good reason to some degree, but mindset leads the way. And that when I was actively working to reduce my ANA and to reverse lupus, one of the things that I realized all the way along was that my mindset was what would lead the way to choose. And like you talked about self-compassion and, which is scientifically proven to heal our bodies. And so, I used visualization a lot. I had, because of course, so I'm sure you're familiar with an ANA and how it attaches to the nuclear material in your body, causing damage. And so I would use visualization, which is something I learned part of mindset, to influence my own body and talk to my immune system and do the things that I needed to do. I mean, I had literally a whole visualization of like, I'm a horsewoman. I grew up on horseback. So I would ride in on my T cells, right, in my steed, and I would have my zinc shield and a vitamin C sword, and to help regulate. So T cells are regulating cells to the B cells that are going rogue. And so, that was a way to get into my own body and into my own head, and the mindset of, I have control here. I have control here. And not from and this is from a layman's perspective, right? This is just from someone who is just very determined to not, to define myself through terms of wellness rather than illness. So, so these are ways to take control of our own body. And I guess, coming back to GLP-1s and the idea of like a quick fix, or like, taking a shot to replace the nutrition that your body needs, those building blocks that we need. And I guess I feel like for me, coming from a perspective of nutrition and building myself through healthy nutrition, you're like, it's like you can't build a house, right, without the wood and the mortar and and it's like we're asking our bodies to do all of the things that we need to do, but not giving what it needs.
Right, that makes sense. So this is to you, Annie. So when someone overeats, what are they really feeding?
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, and that's a really important question, isn't it? Like, where, what's the root of this? Or is this in an emotional? I talk a lot about attachment also
Hmm.
because it's really closely connected to autoimmune. There's a
Okay.
direct line there. And so, um, it's what are you feeding within yourself, right? So,
Hmm.
or disordered eating, right? So I did that too. And what are you feeding in yourself, or what are you depriving yourself of? And feeding to suppress emotions, or feeding to really not feel, disconnect yourself
Right.
from, or unconscious eating. Just, I feel bad, and now all of a sudden I've got a donut in my hand, right?
Okay.
So
Okay.
addressing all of this is just, for me, therapy was key because it taught me self-compassion. It taught me to love myself enough to nourish myself correctly
Okay.
and to not hide through food, or not um, use it to stuff my feelings or whatever. So all of those things, are ways that um, but exactly what Paul's talking about is, the quick fix, right? But we don't want that.
Right.
We don't want to face down our demons because it hurts. It's painful. It's hard. It's hard work. And so it's easier to avoid the hard work and, stuff our feelings with food or other things. But um, it's a process. And people ask me, they're
Yeah.
like, well, how did you reverse lupus? Because a lot of, obviously, people want to know that lupus
Of
sucks.
course.
Yeah. So, and
Yes.
it's complicated, right? It's complicated. But I feel like with the GLP-1s, like we're kind of doing the same thing. We're just avoiding it. We're just stuffing
Right.
it with something else and
Right.
not
Right.
actually dealing with, the root of our food, really, of our relationship with food, our relationship with our
Hmm.
bodies.
Hmm. And I think we kind of covered the question. Does the weight loss shot solve a problem or help people avoid one? And I think that's really a big question that everybody's kind of like looking at. I know I'm looking at it like, what is
Hmm.
this really doing to us as people? What is it doing? Just exercise. What happened? What happened about getting out? All of those important things. What happened? Listening to your body. Are we doing that anymore? And what are we teaching the next generation to do? So that's kind of what's floating through my mind. So if anybody can tell us, out of the panel, um, what's really happening here with this shot, and what are they avoiding? What are people avoiding?
I think you're hitting the nail on the head there. When I alluded to earlier, that people want something for nothing.
Mm,
They've got themselves in this fix, and they want to
right.
get out of it without any pain or effort on their part. They want it fixed. But I think the one thing that people miss is this is a multifaceted thing, but it's
Okay.
multifaceted in its mental uh, options, mental things that are at play here. And
Okay.
the root of all of this starts back in our childhood. Where do we learn to eat? We learn to eat from our parents,
Yeah.
Sure.
and if our parents probably ate the best that they knew how to do, but most diets, face it, are very not very good diets,
Right.
and especially years and years ago when there wasn't as many good foods available. And
Hmm.
it's interesting to follow the progression of food and availability and how it's changed. And nutrition has changed over time. And people never talk about white flour. White flour started back in the 1800s with roller milling, and they removed most of the components of the wheat to make this fine white flour that made this wonderful bread that everybody loved.
Right.
But they took all the nutrition out of it, and they started seeing
Wow.
diseases from it. It wasn't until the 30s and
Hmm.
actually the early 1940s before they started supplementing uh, the flour. And if you're taking all this nutrition out, you're only supplementing things back into it that allow
Wow.
it to not cause you to show signs of disease. I mean, that's not really health. But people learn to eat from their families, and they carry these habits with them. And society hasn't helped. people come out and people like to eat potato chips. Well, gee, that's a big seller. I'm going to start my own brand of potato chips and my own brand of cookies and my own brand of this and that. And people love this stuff.
Right.
And you look at the grocery store, you go around the edge of the grocery store and you see some fresh fruits and vegetables and meats and things. And then you look in the middle of the store and there's just all this processed food. Well,
Yep.
where do people eat from? They eat from that source of food. And so it's not surprising that there are so many people who are, one, nutritionally unhealthy. And there's all kinds of levels of nutrition from extremely healthy to, ready to die. And people they have a very poor conception of what true health is. And so
Right.
they'll eat these protein bars. They'll say, well, this says it's healthy for me. Well, it may have a couple of components in there that are healthy for you, but it has 10 more that are not healthy for you. And they have a very poor conception of reality of what is health, what is healthy. And even when you talk to people and they say, well, I eat healthy, what do you eat? And they have no concept really of what good health is. And this is all come from their childhood, and as they've grown up and as they listen to these advertisements and stuff, and your physician's trying to blame the people for purposely going out there and making these unhealthy products and promoting them on people. I don't think that's it at all. I think it's something that's just a natural progression of our free market. If you can make a product that people will buy and they buy it, they're great. And people keep doing this, but the really truly healthy foods are not promoted very well. And like Paul said, people don't like to eat certain things. And, and Paul and Annie have hit it right on the head with everything they've said. I think it starts back with our eating habits that we develop as a child and as we develop as we go along. And I think this is where we need to get into. We need to get away from all this stuff because there's a million ways that you can spin this. There's a million things. They do all these studies on these hormones and things that, this hormone causes hunger. And so if we control this hormone, you're going to not be hungry, and then you're going to not eat, and then you're going to not be fat. That's not true. I mean, that hormone may be involved in that process of hunger, but it's not controlling. It's not going to control the mental habit that you have of eating and all of the associated things that go along with that.
Yeah, that's good.
So we've got to get back to basics. We've got to get back to the really underlying cause of obesity and address that. And none of that's being addressed anyway. I'm sure Paul addresses it and what he does with people, because he's looking at nutrition and getting them away from their poor nutrition and these things. And he just nailed it, with their good food. She got herself out of lupus with eating well. And how many of our disease processes are a result of our poor diets? I would say 90% of them are. And the cholesterol issues and the high blood pressure issues and all these other things, diet and exercise is an extremely important part of it. This is one thing that Paul may disagree with me on, but exercise has no place in a weight loss program. Exercise is extremely important for physiological health and other parts. But as far as losing weight and being nutritionally healthy, exercise has no part of that. That's all dietary. And once you get the nutritional part, then you can start working on the physiological part, which is the exercise. And that's extremely important. Our bodies are designed to work. But they need what they are designed to work with before they do the work. You work your body without the proper nutrition, you're doing it harm rather than good. So we've all, I think, hit the nail on the head here and pointed out some very good things here. But I think what I'm trying to do with my program is get back to basics. Get away from all this other nonsense, and let's get right down to the root cause of all of this, and then let's address that.
Yeah, that's good. Well, that's good. Anyone else?
I just want to follow up with that, just in talking about general health and disease and dealing with, autoimmune conditions or diseases. And I've asked people, I talk to people, and I've asked them, how many of you have, when you received your diagnosis of lupus or Sjogren's or Graves' disease or whatever, your doctor said, let's get you to a good nutritionist, let's get you to a registered dietitian, and let's assess your lifestyle. And then, let's talk about that in terms of treatment for your illness. And I can tell you But the answer is zero. Zero. No one says that. No one says, let's take a look at your lifestyle and let's take a look at your diet and what are you eating? Are you getting enough sleep? You know,
Right.
are you exercising? Are you meditating? I meditate daily. That was part of my healing as well. I do yoga daily. You know, and I'm strong. Like when I've had a body scan, when my doctor scans my body, he was like, whoa. He said, you are a strong woman. And I'm like, yeah, I am, because I do therapeutic bands every day and I do yoga every day. And that, you know, it's deceptive. People look at me and they think because I'm overweight, that I'm not healthy, but I'm actually very healthy. And I, you know, I attribute so much of that to my nutrition, you know, to eating whole foods and growing up knowing how to literally pick something from the garden and you bring it home and you cook it and that's what you eat.
Yeah.
Like for me, there wasn't that was Dr. Lewis talking about, you know, learning that in childhood. And, you know, I was so lucky. I was so fortunate because I learned, you know, I grew up in an agricultural community. I literally grew up on horseback, you know, wrangling cattle. Like, you know, we had a garden. You go out and you bring food in. And so when I was diagnosed with celiac disease, I had just lost my sister and my best friend 6 days apart. And 3 weeks later, I was diagnosed with celiac. And I was flattened, like, not gonna lie. But when I was able to look up again, what I realized, what more than anything else, is I had gratitude for the fact that I can handle food. I know how to handle it. I cook from scratch. So I always have. So I realized that that I was really lucky that way, and that, you know, food is medicine. Food is health. Food is life. So then I was able to write my second gluten-free cookbook, because what I kept hearing is people are just when they're diagnosed with celiac, and you know, they're like, I don't even know how to feed myself. I don't know how to feed my family because it's so completely pervasive. It's life altering. And for me as a food writer, it was identity loosening. But it was so important. I felt like it was so important to share what I grew up with. Like, you know, like Dr. Lewis said, that what I grew up with isn't the norm. People don't know how to do that. Like, people don't know how to cook. And so it's essential to be able to go to the grocery store, like you were talking about, and, you know, not shopping the center of the grocery store, right? Shop the perimeter of the grocery store, because that's where whole food and nutrition lives. So the really nutritious foods.
Okay. All right. Paul, do you have something to say?
Look, I pretty much agree 99% with what Lewis said about that in terms of the exercise. The only caveat is a specific population, which is the fitness building thing. So they're not relevant to the conversation. They would use that if they're a smaller person and exercise as a weight loss tool rather than just cutting food more. But that's a very specific competitive sport, which we're not going to say it's not healthy. But simple to say that. It's a sport, and most things aren't actually, most high-level sports aren't healthy. We can agree with that pretty quickly. With what I really loved about how Annie said is that she had the fortune to learn how to deal with food and how to cook from scratch. And when I put people through that model with the mitigate, the maximize, and all that type of stuff, I like to look at skills. And if you can't achieve something, it's generally due to a lack of skills. And how many Americans/Australians can't actually cook from scratch? Mm-hmm. Cool. So how can we actually facilitate that? That's one of the questions I ask with clients I'm working at. Can you actually do this? Rank yourself and score 1. Can we do this? And by a lot of the time, when people won't do a behavior and won't follow a behavior and stick to it, besides just looking at just one of the mindset, we need to look at, do they know why? Do they know when? Do they know how? Okay. And is there something blocking them? That's the next question I ask. Is something blocking you? Like, for example, if it's cooking and someone doesn't have a pot or pan set, that's a pretty big block. Yeah. Okay, cool. Yeah. Go buy a pot and pan.
Absolutely.
With my the weight loss population, a lot of times buy a food scale. Have you got one? No. Okay, cool. Let's buy a food scale. And then we can get some portion control. And then once you've learned that, after 4 weeks, we scrap that. And then we can use like more of an intuitive eating approach where you know that plate of pasta is not this big, it's that big. If it's pasta, just a rough example. So it's interesting, this whole conversation, because we have this opportunity now where we have unlimited resources and information access at our fingertips to help us develop said skills that we need to do to improve our health. Yet we're also at an impasse where we've got magic pills and potions that we can inject into us and, activate, glucagon and leptin and all the other weight loss hormones, which, as Lewis said, isn't really the way to do weight loss, because anytime you inhibit or antagonize a hormone, you're going to get a corresponding response somewhere else in the body. So, I think what everyone said really makes sense. It is more of a systemic issue than just, cool, we need to eat better and exercise. We also need to develop the skills to do that.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I love that. So now we're going to talk about the shot culture, and each of you are going to be asked a question in your expertise concerning the shot. Okay. So I think I'll start with the doctor first. What's the truth patients aren't being told about these shots?
Well, I don't think the side effects are really stressed very much. I think people more now come to the physician wanting these shots rather than coming in and say, oh, what can I do? And then they're offered the shot. People have come to expect from physicians that when you go to a doctor, you expect to come out of there with some kind of a drug to fix the problem that you're dealing with. And so they go in there and they want these shots. They want these pills. They want something that's going to give them the edge that they need. And a lot of people struggle for years and years with their weight because they keep doing this yo-yo stuff. They try to diet and do these other things. They follow this plan and that plan, and they just don't work because there's such a stress on their body. Like I alluded to earlier, it's more of a mental stress than anything. I think Annie alluded to that and Paul, and that it's a mental stress that somebody changes their diet radically. It's a really strong motivator to not do that anymore. Mm-hmm. And so these shots, if I can take a shot and I don't feel like eating, and I lose all this weight, bingo! I've won. I've achieved my goal. But they kind of ignore the side effects because everybody has this mentality. Oh, that's not going to happen to me. Right. Well, it happens to somebody. It happens to a lot of people. You may just be the one that it's not happening to right now, or there may be some side effect that's not going to show up for years that's going to nail you in the end. It could drop back to fen-phan. Those two drugs were available for a long time as appetite suppressants individually. When somebody teamed them up, they had a pretty profound effect, and they became the drug of choice. And people just dove on those, just like they're doing these GLP-1s. Mm-hmm. And they were losing weight. It was wonderful. This was the most wonderful thing that ever came along. Until people developed pulmonary hypertension and started eating away at their heart valves and stuff, which caused it to be removed from the market. So what's waiting out there for this GLP-1 that's going to be nailing people? And already it has a horrible side effect profile. But I know people on that say, well, it's not affecting me, and I've been on it for a long time, and so I don't have to worry about it. Well, it might be getting you to where you want to be now, but how healthy are you? And when people, like I say, there's a whole lot of misinformation out there about what is health, what is healthy eating, and people kind of pick up what they like about that, and they eat that way, and they say, oh, I'm eating healthy because I'm doing this, that, and the other, but in reality, they're not that healthy. And they're losing their weight with the GLP-1s, but what's waiting around the corner to come out and bite you? And what are you going to be doing 10 years from now? Are you going to be on the GLP-1 still? Are you still going to be eating that poor diet? Are you still going to be making yourself miserable by not being able to eat the things that you want to eat or should be eating? And it's a dead-end street. And so, I don't think they're being told that much about the side effects. Or maybe they say, well, maybe they'll tell them the worst side effects. And they don't tell them everything, but it doesn't take much reading. Just read the package insert. And
Mm.
I mean, if that doesn't steer you away from it, then
Yeah, right.
so
Mm.
yeah, it's a big issue, but
Right.
it's so popular right now, and people are getting success with it. But yeah, they're losing weight, but at the same time, they're already really have poor health nutritionally and probably medically too. And now they're eating less of what is not good for them, so their nutritional
Mhm.
health is getting even worse.
Right.
But nobody ever talks about that.
Right.
Nobody explains that to them, and they're just jumping on it and going crazy with it. So
Right.
I think it's really a disservice what they're doing. But the pharmaceutical companies jumped on this. They're making billions of dollars on these GLP-1s. Like I
Hmm.
said, they started out trying to develop a drug that would help the type 2 diabetics, and they fell on this cash cow that is, inadvertently by some side effect, is helping people lose weight, and they are playing that out to the max.
Right.
And um, everybody's jumping on it. People are
Right. Right.
compounding these different drugs so that you can take them orally, and it's crazy. But
Yeah.
that's where it's at. But people are really unaware of these things, and it's hard to get somebody when they have a mindset. And I'm sure Paul runs into this a lot. People have a mindset of what they think is right, and when you show them reality,
Yeah.
they don't like it, and it's
Hmm.
hard to steer them in the right direction.
Yeah.
So I'll let Paul and Annie address this.
Yeah. Um, to Paul, can someone take the shot and still stay out of shape or mentally or physically?
And stay out of shape.
Yeah. Still,
Yeah.
yeah, be out of shape. Yeah.
Yep, absolutely. There will always be like when we're talking about when Lewis is talking about like drugs and consequences and side effects, right? There will
Hmm.
be like there's an average, someone will get sick,
Hmm.
and there will always be an outlier where someone won't get sick. And it's
Right.
like everyone's probably met someone's uncle who smoked every day of their life and they lived to like
Right.
105, right?
Yes.
That's not the norm. That's an outlier. Okay.
Yeah.
So what we'll find with any kind of medication or weight loss approach is that there will be people on opposite ends of the spectrum there.
Respect.
Where
Yeah. Yeah.
what will happen is some people will take it and they'll get zero improvements. I had a client who was taking it and they were taking it and they just got hungrier. They were just like, which is total opposite to everyone else, right? Like they were just
Right.
eating everything in sight, and their food noise, which was the reason they went on it, sorry, with their doctor, was to reduce that food noise in their head. And the food noise just went up and up and up. Whether that was placebo from the fact that they were like, it should be gone and it's not, so therefore it's worse, and now I'm going to fixate on that, or it was the fact that the drug just didn't work for their unique biochemistry, which everyone has unique biochemistry. Yeah, that could be the case. So absolutely people will go on it and it won't work. Some people work amazingly without side effects. My caveat to that is side effects when, because over a long enough time frame, with the people who are better suited for any kind of medication biochemically, they have better detoxification pathways, for example, or whatever it is. They'll eventually you eventually rob Peter to pay Paul. It will eventually come either way. And with the people who don't work with that medication, it's generally a sign that there's something else going on and they need to address it. And a lot of the time, it's probably
Right.
here because their behaviors that they're going to do are going to antagonize the action of the medication entirely.
Right.
And they'll probably just compensate and just eat like a ton more because they feel like the weight loss drug is doing the job for them.
Gotcha. Wow. I didn't think about that part. Thank you. Thank you. To Annie, if hunger is suppressed, what happens to the emotional trigger? Does that problem go away, or just stays there, waits, and what happens?
Yeah, I think that's a good question because kind of the same thing that Paul is saying, but within our emotional self, that if we don't, address our own emotional needs and our, again, like even going back to attachment, right? So early childhood interactions that a lot of times are triggers for people, right? So and you can't medicate yourself out of a nutritional deficit.
Mm-hmm.
deficient diet. I think that's what I'm trying to say. Yeah, you can't medicate yourself out of bad eating habits, right? It's or repressing your emotions or not recognizing your triggers. A shot's not going to help any of those things. And I guess I told the story about my mom just to illustrate that medical interventions have risks, right? And exactly what Dr. Lewis was talking about, right? Like fen-phen, that and people just did it. My mom did this surgery. Like, talk about drastic, talk about difficult, right? Like, rather than, and because like Dr. Lewis is talking about, everybody jumping on board, and it's like, oh, we're going to do this thing, and that's where she was, and it killed her, literally. So my kids didn't have their grandmother because of the whole I didn't have my mom because of this wanting to take the easy fix, and not easy because that wasn't easy, but to not deal with what really was the issue
going on,
right? Never dealt with the issue, but jumped on that. Well, I'm gonna do this just to fix it. So I can't. It's just not a viable path. And with the GLP-1s, too, my understanding is, and I'm not an expert, let me just say, but my understanding is that once they stop, if you stop those, the weight comes back on. So you've gone through all this and haven't really changed your attitudes or your understandings or your self-compassion or the love enough, or to love yourself enough to just not be willing to engage in those behaviors anymore, because I'm valuable. I'm worth, eating right. I'm worth those things. And that's part of that whole process of processing that, your own inner world.
So now we're going to go to the part where we talk about food and control, and are we eating for nourishment or control, comfort, or escape? And I'm going to give each of you a question in your specialty, and you can answer it for the audience. To the doctor, what does healthy eating actually mean beyond the trends?
Well, healthy eating is providing the nutritional components that your body needs to function as it was designed to function. And these are contained in the foods that we eat or should be eating. And food's been divided up into nutritional similarity groups. And that's why the food pyramid actually started back in the 70s. A woman in Sweden developed this for another purpose. But the United States finally adopted it in the 90s. The FDA published it as part of a healthy program. But the foods are divided up in commonalities. And if you eat from those different food groups in a balanced fashion, you'll get everything that your body needs as far as energy components, the right amount of protein, carbohydrates, fats, the other nutrients that you need, vitamins and minerals and things like that. It's all contained in these foods. And the pyramid that merely gives you an idea of what foods are in what category, kind of gives you a guideline, and the amount that you should eat from each group. And this varies too, depending on your needs. And we don't have time to talk about all that now, but it's these nutritional components that we need. And when you start processing food, you start removing some of these components. And just merely washing something, soaking it in water and then throwing the water out, you're leaching out some of the water-soluble vitamins and things, and you're throwing it out. And things that are processed, some processed things aren't too bad, but you buy some canned food, and they've washed that, and they've boiled it and thrown the water off, and then all kinds of things to it. And it's still it's reasonably nutritious, but it's not nearly as nutritious as eating the raw, unprocessed foods. And that's where we should be heading, and eating in the proper amounts. When you start delving into these super processed foods, potato chips, cookies, ice cream, cake, soda pop, these sorts of things. I mean, a lot of those things are, most of them are negative nutrition, meaning that you take in all these calories, but you get no nutrition from it. So your body is forced to process all these things with what you have left in your body. And that just deprives your body of more and more nutrition and nutrients. So your nutritional health goes away. So what people aren't trained to do, and what really lacking, is their understanding of these basic nutritional component ideas and how you go about eating properly. Eating is very much a habit, and it's an extremely powerful habit. It's probably worse than smoking 5 packs of cigarettes a day and drinking a fifth of whiskey a day.
Wow.
It's a very powerful habit. We don't have to smoke, we don't have to drink, but we have to eat. And so, you know, where are you going to go with that? Like Annie alluded to, these people, after they stop their GLP-1 shots, well, first off, they didn't learn to eat more nutritionally healthy taking the shot. They were eating whatever they were eating, just less of it. Now they take the shot away, whether it's a mental thing or whether they actually do have an increased hunger, they go back to eating, and virtually everybody gains their weight back. So what have they accomplished? Nothing. They've spent a lot of money. They've made themselves miserable. They've exposed themselves to potentially a lot of side effects and other health issues, and they've gained nothing, and maybe even lost, because most people who lose weight and gain the weight back gain more weight than what they lost.
Wow.
So nutrition is key here. And how do you teach people about nutrition and get them to alter their lifestyle to embrace better nutrition and things like that? That's key. And whether you're talking medically or from a coach, you know, a physical coach training aspect, or whatever your point of view is, nutrition is key.
Yeah. Well, that's good. Thank you so much. Thank you. That's good. Paul, can you out-exercise a bad relationship with food?
For a very, very small period of time with great sacrifice to your joints. Like we look at athletes, you'll see like in sports like the NBA, for example, you see athletes with pretty horrendous diets, still maintaining decent body composition and stuff like that. Again, they're outliers. They're the genetic elite. There's like 450 NBA players out of how many people want to play professional basketball. So no, you'll never out-exercise it, your nutrition in any way, shape or form. I could go for a 10K run tomorrow and I could finish it off in 2 Mars bars. And the actual, in terms of the calorie burn versus what they take in. So when people try and out-exercise their nutrition, my question, this kind of really fits into what Annie is talking about a lot. So with the mindset around food, I normally ask people, what are they running from? Like when they're trying to out-exercise their bad diet. It's a really powerful question, because then people need to look at, you know, well, what am I actually avoiding, and what problem is food solving for you right now? Okay. And what's happening is they're basically addressing a problem at a different level at which it's created. The problem's created here in their head from emotional things, attachment when they're a kid. But they're dealing with it with food, which is right here. And they're like, oh, I'm going to solve that problem by running a lot and doing a lot of exercise. Right. And then lead into disordered. It creates a pretty multifaceted problem where you have a disordered relationship to exercise, a disordered relationship with food, and a disordered relationship with yourself, with self. So it's a very complex problem. And in a coaching type environment, you need to ask people a lot of questions about that to delve into that. It's probably outside the scope of the call, but it's a really thing that we come across a lot in the fitness industry in particular. We see a lot of people trying to out-exercise their diets and do a whole bunch of crazy stuff to basically avoid the actual major problems that they're not willing to confront. And one thing that Lewis said a while ago was people like to avoid reality. They don't define their reality accurately. And the reality is that they're trying to do something to solve the wrong problem. They can't actually see what their real problem is. And when we can help our clients identify that, we can then equip them with the correct skills that they need to change, whether it's psychological, emotional, behavioral, or actual skills itself.
Well, that's good. That's really good. Thanks.
You're welcome.
So, Annie, what does it look like to actually know your body instead of following those rules out there?
Yeah, it's a process. That's a
Hmm.
process. And sorry about the dramatic darkening here.
Well, that's
Don't
okay.
usually do these at night. So I was like, oh, I didn't do correct lighting. Anyways, sorry about that.
It's
Um,
okay.
yeah, but it is a process,
Okay.
to really know your body and to be okay with it, right?
Mhm.
Because society doesn't tell us, especially as women, to be okay with our bodies.
Yeah, no.
And it really took a lot of work. It took a lot of personal, it took a lot of therapy. It took a lot of, like I said, I've said several times, self-compassion is so key.
Hmm.
Self-love, changing
Hmm.
the voice in my own head to not berate myself and not to beat myself up for who I am. And, I've lost 40 pounds since I started writing my book.
Hmm.
Um, and that is, just being more accepting of myself, to be honest,
Right,
like really
right.
helped that. Having the celiac diagnosis certainly made me, again, reassess. And I've done that more than once in my life. But I really think it takes self-love, self-compassion to change the voice in your head. And like Brene Brown says, when I realized that I spoke to myself in a way that I wouldn't speak to someone I didn't like, I knew I had to change. And I find that so powerful because we beat ourselves up so much, and that's a whole nother thing. Like that's, and I'm sure you both, you understand the chemistry even behind that of
Hmm.
repeating those patterns. And so learning to love myself, learning to love my body, learning that I was enough, that I was, um, recognizing my own value and self-worth. All of those things help me to, accept myself and be in better tune with my body.
Yeah, yeah, that's good. Well, audience, it sounds like to me that most people don't need another diet because I hear this from the panelists. They need honesty about their patterns. That's what I'm hearing, the mindset around all of that and our patterns that we learned from generations to generations. Now, panel, I know that we're kind of getting up on time. I wanted to ask each of you, to say something in your own expertise to our audience about these two things, eating to live versus fixing my diet with a shot or a pill. So this is the part that you can share, to the audience, that give your biggest piece of advice to them. And we'll go backwards. We'll start with Paul first.
Well, I get to go first. That's exciting. Cool. So my biggest piece of advice for that, again, is it does go back to that framework, the wants, preferences, sacrifice, consequences, and how to maximize your opportunity. With a lot of people, I feel like if we take a more holistic approach to the entire thing that we're looking at doing, we can create a better plan. And from there, with the preferences, you can be healthy eating in the multiple ways. I see there's a comment on keto diet. There's people who will talk about vegan diets and stuff like that. As long as you're aware of the consequences and sacrifices of everything. And then there was a question earlier in the chat of what was the best way to measure proper nutrition. If the way that you choose to eat and live your life allows you to hit a decent level of health, i.e., measured by blood markers, blood chemistry, blood pressure, all those other factors there, and you can function at a good daily rate, I think you've done a good job. Versus that using a pill or an injection, if you are going to do that pathway, you need to be aware that there's multiple consequences to that. There's probably other
Mm-hmm.
behaviors and things that you have to bring into your life to make that work. And if you do go down that path, cool. How are you going to come out of it? We've
Right.
all alluded to that when you are taking a GLP-1, that the weight will go back on when you finish. And it's not due to the medication itself. It's due to the fact that you haven't changed the lifestyle standards or behaviors that you and skill sets that you have. So if you are going to go down that pathway, because I've never want to be the person that demonizes all approaches. Like there will be benefit in most approaches for some people. Okay. It's just that how do we pull ourselves out? Some people may need it for medical reasons. How do we pull ourselves out of it and solve the problem for the long term rather than constantly replacing that Band-Aid?
Oh, that's nice. Excellent. Annie?
I'm going to come from this from an autoimmune perspective. Your body's not your enemy. It's really asking for what it needs. And the key is to listen. We have to listen to our bodies. We have to listen to our needs and not meet them through ways that are self-harming, but instead through ways that are self-loving. And that, in my world, means recognizing the nutrients and the food that your body needs, rather than taking a shot to shut yourself down. Heal and I'm just going to put that in here, and heal your gut. Heal your gut. Work on it. Like, really work on healing your gut. 70% of your immune system lives in your gut. So take good care of it.
Yeah, that's good. Yeah, I agree with that one. Okay, Dr. Lewis.
Yeah, well, I think we've received some very good information here today. When I heard what Paul said and Annie, they've given some very strong, solid advice there. We're all on the same page. The shots and doing these weird diets and weird kind of approaches to losing weight, they're not a long-term fix. You can virtually do any of these things for short term and lose some weight, but what are you going to do in the long term? And the thing that people don't really realize when they're trying to lose weight and stuff like this, what you need to do is work on your health, your nutritional health. Mm-hmm. And when I work with somebody on losing weight, we don't really necessarily talk about losing weight. Yeah, that's their goal. But what they need to do is get nutritionally healthy first. Mm-hmm. And in the process of getting nutritionally healthy, as you start doing that, they cut out an enormous number of calories from their diet, and plus they're nutritionally more healthy. Their body functions better. They lose a lot of weight just by being more nutritionally healthy. Mm-hmm. And once you have converted your diet, it takes a long time. These habits don't change overnight, and everybody's alluded to that. You're going to have to spend some time doing it. And as you do it for a while and you start making yourself more nutritionally healthy and stuff, once you get to a certain point, if you're still having problem losing weight, then you just need to look at what you're converting to, because you can eat a lot of calories that are very nutritionally healthy. So as you learn to balance that out, you learn to cut more of those out, you'll get down to your weight easily, and you're not going to be trying to diet. You're going to be working on making yourself nutritionally healthy. And once you do, you're going to be there. And not only that, you will have spent the time doing it. You're going to be doing the things that you like, that please you. Like Paul said, he asked these people where they want to go, what are they looking for. It's their options. They have to do things that please them. And you have to do the same thing nutritionally. You have to do things that please you. If you don't do things that please you, that are nutritionally healthy, you'll never get there, because you'll always be drawn back to those things that do please you. So it's a process. It's a time process. And you just need to embrace that and forget all this noise that you hear out there. There's just so many fallacies and lies and things floating around out there, things that have been accepted into the medical community and other professional places like that. You think, oh, wow, the doctor knows everything. No, the doctor doesn't know everything. He only knows what he's been told. And people have the mentality that these people, all these advertisements, they're doing the research themselves and they're coming up with all this information. That is a complete lie. There's only a few people who are really doing real research, right? And everybody else uses the information that they produce. And if some of these people produce some lies and fallacies, that's what gets promoted. That's what gets pushed. And there's a lot of that information out there, just a lot of it. People badmouth the medical community that they're trying to hurt people with all this stuff. No, doctors are trying to heal people. They're really trying to heal people, but we have limited resources to do that. Pharmaceutical companies, they get bad press that, oh, they're just trying to get your money. Well, yeah, they want your money, and they'll take it if they can get it. And GLP-1 is a very good example of that. But they also make a lot of medications. You think of the antibiotics and other things that we have that save so many lives and done so much good for us and everything. There really is a lot of good out there, but it's going to take some time to enact these things and do these things, get in touch with your body, like Annie suggested here. So that's a lot of very good information that was presented here today. And I agree with everything that they said. And it's just something you're going to have to work at, but you're probably going to have to find somebody to help you get through that initial crunch to get you on the right path.
Absolutely. That's beautiful. You all have been stupendous. You've given us some great information, some new things that some of us didn't know, and even myself. But I want to thank you for giving my audience the help they need to understand what all of this noise is about. And I love what you all have said. Um, Audience, your body is not the problem. Your patterns are. And until you deal with the why behind what you do, you will keep looking for something outside of you to fix something that starts within you. If this episode has hit you, don't just like it, apply it and share it with someone else. This is Edna White and my esteemed guest. We bid you good night and thank you for being here today. Bye for now.
Thanks so much for having us.
Thank you
Annie.
for having us.
This is very, very good.